Wargaming tactics. Do you ever surrender? Or is it always no retreat, no surrender? That's what I want to explore in this vlog from both the narrative side of the game and the tactical side of the game. I've been pushing up here to the Wargaming Tactics playlist this idea of universal tactica. We're doing this miniature wargaming thing, and although the narrative is different and the system is different, there are certain fundamentals, there are certain opportunities that we're looking for on the table. And I want to say most of the time, those are tactical, but there are some narrative considerations. So I'm going to mix and blend both of those as we build this Tactica narrative checklist. Now, with regard to surrendering or quitting a game right in the middle, before its conclusion, I'm not talking about we run out of time at the gaming club, it closes at 10, it was a bigger game than we thought, it's 9:30, we got to start packing up, 9:45. I'm talking about you're playing through a game, and at some point, hopefully it's not turn 1, but turn 2 or turn 3, you realize you're just done. You're going to lose. Maybe you made some mistakes. Maybe you had some unlucky rolls. Maybe just the scenario turned against you. Do you quit? Do you say to your opponent, look, you won. You won, and walk away? Yes or no? I never surrender. I never quit, except in maybe one or two circumstances. Conflicting? Well, let's jump into that. So there's this idea with wargaming. We're stepping out of space and time, right? We're physically taking time out of the day-to-day, family, school, other responsibilities, to do this wargaming thing. We have both invested, in a good way, tremendous amounts of time building, painting, collecting, getting everything ready, making custom foam cases to carry our miniatures. You're very proud of your army. And we're coming together to do this wargaming thing. And we're trying to put ourselves in that moment as a tabletop general, as a commander, as a fleet commander, as a mech commander, whatever it's going to be, right? So in that moment, we kind of have a social contract. I'm going to do my best to win. I'm going to give you my best game. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I go for a little bit too much tabletop glory, but I'm going to come out swinging. So within that, if something happens, whatever happens and I'm losing, if I just quit, if I say you won and walk away, even if it's done politely, that's kind of taking away from your fun. I mean, forget about the narrative. A battle just doesn't end. I can't just walk away. I never quit. There's that social contract. If I'm having fun blasting you off the tabletop and showing you no mercy, and for whatever reason it switches, then we're playing it out because we have this social contract of time invested together. So in that regard, I always play it to the end, and I don't like players that quit. Now, I'm not talking about a sudden interruption in the game or something came up and you have to leave or you ran out of time. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we're sitting down to play this game. We're 2 or 3 turns in. For whatever reason, you're getting destroyed, and you say, you know what? You win. Let's play another game or I'm done here. I can understand sometimes that happens with frustration, but always finish the game out. Now, where I will surrender, and then we're going to jump into some tactica. When I do play historical war games, this is kind of the difference here. Historical wargaming, World War I, World War II, Napoleonics, DBA, DBN, things like that, we're trying to recreate living history on the table. I mean, we've got pictures of the battlefield as it is now and features then. We recreate that on the battlefield and get everything down 1-to-1. And as a tabletop general, often these scenarios are not even. I mean, sometimes you have a skirmish, but they're not meant to be even. The idea is to recreate historically and ask yourself the question, if you were there, or the choices that they made, if you made those choices, how would things turn out? And I realize it's just a tabletop game with dice and cards, depending on the system. But I go into it from that perspective of it's a narrative. It's a living history. So at a certain point, there will be times where if things are going against me, depending on the scenario, I try to be mindful of what's going on as a commander or as a general or captain, whatever it's going to be. And I will symbolically surrender to my opponent because these are my men. I'm responsible for them. So there have been some times in historicals where I've said, we're at a point, I offer my surrender. Now I'm aware also of the narrative, depending on the history and the time period and who I'm surrendering to, how and where that might go. So sometimes I won't surrender, or I realize if I surrender, the men under my command will be issued mercy, but as a general, I will not. So I try to keep that in mind and do what needs to be done. But in that case, sometimes I will surrender and say, look, we can continue to play it out. What if? But I feel like symbolically I have to make that because we're doing this historical narrative. But that's a very slim case. If it's Warhammer 40,000, if it's Battletech, well, Battletech, I'll accept the surrender as a mech warrior and let you power down. But otherwise, we're going to play this out to the end and see what happens. Now let's jump over to the Tactica side, right? There's a point that you arrive, whether you've made some mistakes, whether you went from tabletop glory, whether you got taken by surprise, whether the tactic didn't work out, for whatever reason. The dice, don't blame the dice, but sometimes I played one game of Warhammer recently, 40K, where my opponent was playing Space Marines, and no joke, the dice were so bad. Like, I had some okay tactics with my Necrons, but the dice were so bad, it was crazy. It was crazy. We got him a new set of dice. Like, literally, I'm like, the Wargaming table over, we were like, you guys got extra dice? Like, I couldn't believe it. So, yes, sometimes the dice work against you. But you arrive at that moment where you say, hey, I don't think I'm going to win this. I don't think I'm going to pull this off. Well, that's where you start to try and turn things around. That's where you get focused. That we're talking on the tactical side of quitting or surrendering, giving up, no retreat, no surrender. Look at that moment and say, okay, it's starting to swing my way. Can I recover? Can I pull it off? Now, at that point, if I can't, and we're putting narrative aside, then what I do is I play out the mission, but I try to turn it into a tactical trainer of the units on the table. I'm going to try and clarify that. I try to now say, pick out individual opportunities and go for it on the table. Like, can I send this unit over here to attack another unit and see how my opponent reacts? Use it as a sense of discovery. Use it as a chance to see what's happening, to learn about my player, to learn literally a toolkit in that moment. Now, that's true. Every war game is that, but often when you're playing the mission, you're confined to the opportunities that are going to bring you closer to the mission. If the game is completely devastated, completely destroyed, then tactically I look for other opportunities to try and see what I can pull off and things we've explored in the Wargaming Tactics playlist. But I always play it to the end. And depending on the system, when I play my Chaos Space Marines, my World Eaters, there's times where the game is switching against me. We play some pretty big games. And I realize just on the volume of dice and how GW games go, I'm not going to win this. Then I play the narrative. When it's my turn, I charge everybody. I charge hundreds and hundreds real-time models. There's been times where I've been playing World War II, and it's like, you know what? We're going to charge. Bayonets, grenades, charge in. So in that perspective, you can embrace the narrative and try to put yourself there and at least go out with some dignity, at least go out with some honor or some tabletop glory versus walking away and just saying, you know what, turn 3, I can't win this, I quit, and pack up your models and go. There is a social contract. Your take on it, your feelings in the comments. We're doing this wargaming thing together. There are rules that are written, and then there's kind of some unwritten rules. And I think it's fair to be mindful of the time, the effort, the energy, and the wargaming fighting spirit of your opponent. No retreat, no surrender, always play it out.